This strengthening partnership reflects our long-held vision of MAPPA as a self-reliant studio on both creative and business fronts. Japanese animation studios should lead with global perspective from planning and development to international reach and related business ventures. We're committed to working closely with Netflix to build a long-term win-win collaboration. Yikes! This is some bad news to wake up to today, so let's just get right into this. This is the president of Studio MAPPA, the same studio that has animated and adapted the Chainsaw Man series, Jujutsu Kaisen, Hell's Paradise, worked on the final season of Attack on Titan, and various other shows. They are a very well-known and well-recognized animation studio, especially in the last 4 or so years. They have become an industry giant, and seeing the president of MAPPA making a comment like this, wanting to focus on global perspective, or in this case, modern and global audiences, is legitimately horrifying, especially when this comment comes out weeks after the actual director of Neon Genesis, Hideaki Anno, said that the audience should be the one to adapt, aka don't focus on the global audience, focus on the people within Japan. And then literally a few weeks after, Hideaki Anno, the director of EVA, said this, we had the KADOKAWA CEO emphasize Japan first approach, and even the SAO director himself, Tomohiko, said the exact same thing, that, focusing on a global appeal may lead to failure, adding that Japanese perception of what is liked overseas likely differs from what is actually popular overseas. This is just really bad news overall. The fact that the president of MAPPA even said something like this is, I'm going to be honest, in one hand, it's to be expected when you look at everything, the writing on the wall, but on the other hand, it's really bad seeing someone that is leading the charge for anime overseas making a statement like this. This is not good, and honestly, this is only going to lead to the same exact situation that has plagued the comic industry, plagued gaming, and also plagued Hollywood for a very long time. This is going to be a downward spiral of a lot of properties that MAPPA is going to associate with. And I hate to be a doomer, but honestly, it's the truth, because we have seen time and time again when companies try to focus on a global appeal or global audience, typically when they cater to this group, it's a group that really doesn't exist, and eventually what caused the actual media to be popular to begin with, it no longer has that element to it. And I've said this over and over again, the reason why anime is popular, or manga is popular, is because it is fundamentally different than everything else out on the market. When someone looks at an anime, when someone looks at a manga, they don't, think of, oh, I want something that's exactly like a Western comic. I want something exactly like something from Hollywood. You want something that is exactly like an anime or manga within Japan. That type of culture, that type of storytelling. You don't want storytelling that is grinded down, sanitized, and exactly what you would expect from a Western form of entertainment. And I think that this right here is just such a bad statement. But let's get into how this happened to begin with. So, it was announced literally earlier this morning that Netflix and MAPPA are entering new strategic partnership for global anime development and distribution. At first glance, there is some elements to this that is good news, and I don't want to just focus on the negative. There is good about this, even if it is very little, and it's not a lot of good news. There is some good news to mention. One in particular that comes to this news is that this is 100% a straight up middle finger to Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll is obviously a monopoly. Crunchyroll has had a monopoly on a lot of anime for a very long time. They are not good for the anime industry, if you want my personal opinion, and I feel like a lot of people are starting to really see that. They have definitely done a lot of damage to just how anime is perceived or how it is done within the West. But the point of the matter is that Netflix, working with MAPPA, one of the biggest industries, or animation studios in the industry, is definitely a big slap to the face for Crunchyroll, because that means that MAPPA, when they work on some big series out of the next big hits, they're going to just straight up give it to Netflix, and Crunchyroll is probably not going to get any of these simulcasting rights or anything like that, which means it's a huge profit loss for Crunchyroll, which means at the end of the day, that's kind of a win, honestly. That means that they finally have competition, which means that they might have to innovate, they might have to try to change, and be better as a company to be able to stop Netflix's growth within the anime industry. But that's where the good news kind of ceases, because anyone that is affiliated with Netflix, you even if you live under a rock, I think you are aware of this, but Netflix has a huge issue with a variety of things. Not when it just comes to anime, but just how they deal with properties to begin with. For one, Netflix has lost licensing for shows. And this is something that happens not just with Netflix, but a lot of different companies in different forms of media. But Netflix has lost shows here and there, licensing to, like, streaming rights or whatever, and these shows go, out, like, you can no longer find these shows legally. You can't go out of your way and legally watch these shows anymore on any different streaming platform because the licensing has just ran out and no one has felt bothered to purchase the licensing once again. And obviously, anime probably works in the exact same way. Well, it does. Correction. It does work in the exact same way. You have licensing for different shows. And let's say some of these shows that MAPPA gets or works on for Netflix gets them, and let's say these licensing runs out eventually, okay? That means that those shows will eventually leave Netflix's platform, and if nobody else picks up those licensing thanks to certain deals or something behind the scenes, then those series are effectively gone. The only way to actually watch them would be through illegal means, and that's if they're preserved. Obviously, there is always a chance they're not preserved, which means that they could theoretically become lost media. But even if that's not the case, I mean, literally I covered this 2 days ago, but you have piracy sites that are always getting struck down and removed and all that, and the reason why this is inherently an issue is because these companies, when they strike down these platforms and stuff, these sites that have a lot of pirated content, there's content on there that are just not licensed. You're not able to legally obtain these series anymore. You're not able to legally read or watch these series anywhere, so you have to go through illegal means to be able to actually watch or read them. And that's theoretically what could happen to some of these shows, that eventually, as the passing of time continues, these shows will be lost. Now, that is a problem for maybe years upon years in the future, but it's still a problem. But getting back into the main point, we have seen that Netflix also arbitrarily removes shows here and there. I believe they have also even removed some of their Netflix originals from their platform, which technically Netflix should own. They've never been anywhere else, but they've removed them off their platform, which means that if something like that can happen, it could definitely happen to some of these MAPPA shows that are put onto the platform. So it's just like I said, it's not good news. Like, Netflix in general, just from that perspective, is very bad for the future of anime. But obviously, I could go a little bit deeper. Netflix is also very well known for how they release their shows. They love to release their shows in bulk batches, which is, I think, inherently a bad thing for anime. For one reason, it kills discussion and hype around certain moments in episodes, because it's like, if an entire season, let's say 10, 12 episodes of a season comes out, then everybody's going to be discussing basically the beginning and then most likely the ending of that season, and the discussion of it's more or less going to die down probably about a few days because everybody's already watched it and that's about it. People are moving on to the next thing. But if a series is coming out on a weekly basis, there will be more conversation around it. And I think a really good example of this, actually, something Netflix recently did, was Stranger Things. I mean, yes, we've all probably seen the memes and stuff. It's like, I don't like girls and all that. Oh, am I getting into that conversation? I'm mad as a Stranger Things fan, okay? That was not good. Not a good ending for Stranger Things. But the point is that Netflix, they did release the final season of Stranger Things in kind of little batches. It wasn't perfect, like episode by episode, but they released them in batches, which did give a lot more discussion to Stranger Things over an entire month than, let's say, oh, it's only discussed for a day or two, and that's basically it. And in the end, maybe Netflix wishes that the discussion of it would have died in a day, because obviously it's been nothing but memes, cope, and negativity around the series thanks to what they did with the final season. But the point of the matter is that it's definitely evident. You can definitely see that when a series is released in, like, spread out like episode releases, there's more discussion, and the series has a chance to reach wider audiences, more people to come in and talk about a series, and kind of get a good feel of how the community is really feeling about something, and if it should continue or not. And so Netflix, their approach to how they release anime has always been with batches and bulk, and I think it's just not good. It's not good for the common watcher of anime, because people don't really like that type of stuff. I don't like it. I know there's a lot of people that do not like that. They want to be able to talk and discuss this series on a weekly basis with their friends, because it is fun. Half of the fun of watching anime or reading a manga chapter is being able to discuss it with the community. That's how I've always felt. I know not everybody's going to share that exact same opinion as me, but I feel like that's a very powerful driving force to the community for anime and manga. But that is another example of Netflix and why it's not good that this partnership is happening. But now we need to get into the MAPPA situation on this. So MAPPA, I've talked about them over and over till, I was blue in the face. For instance, they are a company that has abused their workers. There is a lot of stories about them being a sweatshop and all sorts of horrific stuff within their studio, and they have went on record to try to say they're trying to correct this issue. And I've also talked about this isn't just a Studio MAPPA issue, it's basically every studio within Japan besides a select few. But more or less, MAPPA is a big focus, and they're in the spotlight often because they are a studio that gets such massive series, such mass global appeal, that obviously people are going to talk about them more in terms of how they treat their employees than, let's say, a random studio that, people don't really know or even aware of that work on certain anime. So that's the point I'm getting at, is that MAPPA, they are someone that is leading the charge. They have an image, and the fact that they are doing something like this, and they have been very popular and successful as of late, I feel like is going to be a domino effect that leads other different animation studios to follow their lead and try to appeal to a global audience and miss the understanding of what makes anime so popular to begin with. It's really bad. It's very clear that MAPPA is shifting gears into more of a corporate slash, trying to make as much money as possible. And the warnings and the red flags have been there for a while, especially with Manabu. If you've read any of this man's, interviews and stuff over the years, it's very clear that he is more focused on making as much money as possible than anything else. But at the end of the day, that is the job of a company to do. But it's clear that it's shifting into the exact same issue that's happened in the gaming industry, where they seek profits and record-breaking profits and numbers over actually why they started to make profits to begin with. It's not good, and I just feel like this is a pretty dark day for the anime industry, honestly. There's really not much good news to really pull from this, and that's just my honest takeaway from the entire situation. I'll leave it at that, though. I wanted to talk about this. I thought this was pretty crazy, especially after the comments from Hideaki Anno, the KADOKAWA CEO, and the director of SAO, being basically against something like this, and then this happens. It makes you kind of wonder if the reason why they made those statements is because they heard something in the industry, aka what MAPPA is doing with Netflix, and maybe that is why they said something like that. It's very likely, because obviously they would probably have connections within the industry and be able to talk with some people and probably know this deal is happening. I could definitely see maybe the reason why those were stated was because of this. I could be wrong, no evidence to back that up, but it's possible. Anyways, be safe, stay healthy, I love you guys, Chibi out.